Hi, Sandy Wyllie. I thought he'd choose me over his wife. Who is he? He is my Harvard psychologist, Dr. 𝗵𝗁 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, the omnipotent narcissistic psychologist who encouraged me and went along with me having sex with Dr. 𝗖𝒵𝒗𝗵𝗂𝗲𝗂. And I've written a book about it. Love Bombed by a Harvard Psychologist. Hi, I'm Sandy Wyllie. Welcome to my mental health channel, Mind Matters, where I talk about my personal struggles having borderline personality disorder. I talk about narcissism and schizophrenia. I wrote a book, Life with My Schizophrenic Father, my childhood memoir. I talk about my unethical psychologist who I've had sexual relationships with, and a plethora of other topics, but I only come on as a former patient of almost 20 years. I'm not a licensed therapist, so I cannot give you a diagnosis, and all I ask in turn of you is your kindness and respect in the comments. If you are new to my channel, welcome, welcome, welcome. Please hit that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner. My hair's going goofy today. That way you will be notified each and every time a new video of mine comes out. It's 100% free, so stick around, take a chance. Please share my videos with your friends on your social media platforms. I want to hear from you. You can either write me in the comments and I'll always get back to you, or you can email me, and my email address is down below too. If you want to help support my channel, I'd really appreciate that. You can buy me a cup of coffee, sober me up. The link to that is down below in the descriptions, as well as the links to all of these books that I have written. All right, today I'm going to talk about, there was a time where I thought my Harvard psychologist, Dr. 𝗵𝗁 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, was going to leave his wife for me. I fell madly in love with him. It was love at first sight. Do I believe in love at first sight? Yes, of course I do, because I fell in love. I fell in love 2 times in my life. I fell in love with my Harvard psychologist, Dr. 𝗵𝗁 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂, and I fell in love with my Jamaica Plain psychologist, Dr. 𝗖𝒵𝒗𝗵𝗂𝗲𝗂, and I had a 2-year sexual affair with Dr. 𝗖𝒵𝒗𝗵𝗂𝗲𝗂𝗂. Slept overnight at his house, been on the beach with him, been out to dinners with him, had oral sex, I had intercourse with him, I had sex outside with him. We both went to see, I introduced him to the Harvard psychologist, Dr. 𝗵𝗁 𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂𝗂. I've talked about this in a lot of other videos. It's in all my books, but that's not the focus of this video today. I want to talk about how I really believed that my Harvard psychologist was going to leave his wife. First of all, we had a physical relationship. I sat in his lap. I touched his penis. I laid on the floor. I gave him back massages. I've been in his house. He invited me to his vacation home in Maine. He gave me the phone number. I already had his cell phone number, of course, but he gave me his house number in Maine. And psychologists don't give their home numbers, their house numbers to their patients. Only their office numbers and sometimes their cell phone numbers. But no, he gave me the house number in Maine. He told me to come to Maine and, join him. He did. I know he has a mole on his chest because I felt him up his whole body, so I know he has a mole. Intimate details of his body. He's told me very personal things about his past, how his mother had a deep depression, how his mother and father were separated, and she had a stillborn baby that he thought was a girl, his sister, and he only has one brother. And he told me very intimate things about who he had sex with, the woman he had sex with, Carol and Joan, and his high school sweetheart, Stephanie, and how a teacher of his took him to buy female lingerie, panties to be exact. So I knew a lot of things intimate, deep things. He told me when his wife had breast cancer. He told me when his wife had her intestines, she had her intestines twisted and she had a medical emergency and she was hospitalized for over a week. So she had to have major surgery. He told me when his wife thought she had uterine cancer and was bleeding and had to have a D&C. I mean, I knew when his grandchild was born, the day of the birth. He called me up and told me that his grandchild was born that moment. I bought him a gift basket when his grandchild was born. I knew when his father had a stroke. Everything, all right? I had an emotional affair with him for sure, for 110% sure, and a physical affair. I did not have intercourse with him like I did with Dr. 𝗵𝒂𝗶𝗲𝗲. I had intercourse with him, and I had oral sex, 𝗚𝗚𝑐𝑢𝑛 and cunnilingus with him. I just want to make these things clear. I want to come on. I want to talk about this is my story. It's unique from anyone else. And that's why I want to share it with you, because it's one of a kind. I first fell in love with him, love at first sight. Dick, we'll call him Dick, Dr. Richard Geist Dick. That's what he goes by. He goes by Dick, and he's still practicing, $300 for 50 minutes. And he's going to be 82 this summer. I'll be 60. He's 22 years older than me. He could be my dad. And it took me several months, 3 or 4 months, to fall in love with Jim, Dr. 𝗵𝒂𝒶𝗶𝗲𝗲. And I introduced him to him. I introduced Jim to Dick. He saw him for individual therapy. And me and Jim both went together to Dick's office for couples therapy. So how do you like that? I introduced him. I also introduced Jim to Dr. 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗏, a Yale psychologist. So I introduced him to 2 psychologists, Jim. But let's just stick with this. So how did I think, my husband said, he's never going to leave his wife for you. His wife is Susan Geist. Susan 𝗚CIF, 𝗚CIF. I don't know how to pronounce it, Geist. She was divorced before, and when she met Dick, he was married and had 3 children, 3 boys, okay? So she stole him away from his wife. He was married, living at home with his sons and his wife when he met Susan, his second wife. They had a hot, torrid love affair when they were both working at Mass General Hospital. The whole hospital knew what was going on between the 2 of them. And get this, his wife, Dick's wife, was working there too, while he's carrying on a torrid affair with this psychiatrist. So he dumped his wife and moved in with Susan, the psychiatrist. They bought a house, and the house that they bought in Newton used to be Julia Child's daughter's house. So that house was the house of Julia Child's daughter lived in that house, 1905 Beacon Street. So there's a piece, all these, little tidbits of information that are very interesting. Just like 𝗟𝗶𝗸𝗏𝗏𝗏, my Yale psychologist, he wrote the famous song that Rod Stewart sings, Some Guys Have All the Luck. Google that song and you'll see 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Google 𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and you'll see he's a psychologist who works in Newton. All these little tidbits. But the reason why I felt, he told me he loved me, by the way. Both of these psychologists told me that they loved me. They said it, I love you, okay? He said he was trying to determine if he wanted me to move in with him, Jim. I was going to leave my husband and move in with him. But why did I think that Dick was going to leave his wife for me? Because of his actions, all right? I would call him round the clock, 24/7 access to this man. He'd be at a restaurant with his wife, and I'd call him, and he'd leave his wife sitting at the table in the restaurant all alone and go outside and talk to me. Now, I didn't have any emergency, all right? I just was flirting with him on the phone, sexually playing with him, like sex talk on the phone. And he and his wife was sitting in the restaurant all alone. This wasn't just one time either. And then when he got back home from dinner with his wife, he runs into his office, closes the door, and then he calls me again. Second time within less than an hour. What would you think if it was you? If your psychologist did that, left their wife all alone in a restaurant to talk to you, just to flirt with you. There's no crisis. There's nothing going on in your life that you need to talk about. And then they get home from the restaurant and then they call you again to flirt more with you on the phone. He'd go out, he'd be at friend's house with his wife, and I would call him and he would leave his wife and his friends, you know, and go in the bedroom and close the door and talk to me intimately. And there was no emergency during these talks. There was no crisis. There was nothing going on. We were just flirting with each other. That's all we were doing. In fact, the whole therapy was, for 2 years, was just flirting. I didn't pay him a dime. This was a psychologist that charges $300 an hour. I never paid him a cent. I was 100% free. What would you think if you went to a renowned psychologist and he says, you don't have to pay me. I love you. You're special. Wouldn't you think that they're going to leave their wife for you? I mean, I didn't pay him a dime. I never paid him a single penny. All right. Other patients are paying him $300. And I'm not paying him any money at all. Not a drop. Not a penny. So he's, you know, then his wife is complaining about me. Telling him that, you know, this is too much, that, you know, she can't handle this. She can't handle our relationship. So wouldn't you think that he's leaving his wife if it was you? If you were in my shoes, and he used to come and sit on the couch with me, put his arm around me like we're boyfriend and girlfriend, like we're lovers, you know. He did this while I was his patient. You know, I'd be sitting there talking. He'd get up off his chair, come next to me on the couch, and then put his arm around me, you know, and gaze into my eyes. It was so intense. I mean, I took all my clothes off. Why did I take my clothes off? Because he would get me wet. I'm not kidding. Without even touching me. Can you imagine to be so aroused? Okay, if you're a woman out there, imagine you're sitting in a chair and a guy is sitting a few feet away from you and that you're not touching. He's not touching you. There's no bodily contact. And just being in the man's presence is arousing you. So your panties are drenched. Drenched. Like I had a diaper on, okay? So I wanted to physically show him what his effect was having on me. So I took the bra off. We'll play the stripper music. And I took the panties off that were, okay, like a baby in a diaper. And I wiped them on his arm so he could feel my heat, what my physical body was going through. And he watched me. He stood there and he was totally amazed by the whole thing. He did not tell me to put my clothes back on. He did not leave. He did not turn away. He stood there and he watched. And I'll tell you something else too. He tried to get a look at my ass. The guy is an ass man, okay? You know how guys like T and A? You know what T and A stands for? He was more of an A guy than a T guy, all right? Because I stood totally in front of him, totally nude. No panties, no bra, no anything on. And he was going like this, trying to get a look at the rear, the tush. Yeah. So that's what I know. Another time, here, this book right here, you got to buy this book. I laid in his lap and he spanked me. Right here. Sexually exploited by 3 psychologists. This is what Dick, the Harvard psychologist, did. I laid over his lap on the floor. He had his legs crisscross applesauce. You know crisscross applesauce? He had his legs crossed on the floor. I laid over on top of him, face down, with my tush in the air. And I wrote this in part of the complaint, that he did that, you know. In fact, I'm not sure if I wrote that, but I don't know. There was so much going on physically, emotionally, and everything with this guy that I really believed he was going to leave his wife for me. I really did. Of course, he never did. She complained about me, and then he got rid of me. He just got rid of me. He pulled back. He stopped calling me. He stopped texting me. He stopped emailing me. He stopped the physical touch. He just completely withdrew from me. And that's when I turned into an alcoholic. So there's 2 things that you must know. I'm still an alcoholic. And I'm still in love with him. Yeah. After, I haven't seen him in 3.5 years. And I think about him morning, noon, and night. Even though I still have a licensing complaint with the board out against him. Because he's unethical. He ruined my life. He ruined my family's life. I still am in love with him. I can't help my feelings. My feelings are my feelings. If you know what I mean, if you have broken off with someone because they were harmful to you, it doesn't necessarily mean that you lost feelings for them. You can still have feelings and not see the person. So that's why I thought he chose me over his wife, because of, everything that intimately that happened between us. He held me in his arms. He cradled me. I've been in his workshops. I used to sneak in there on afternoons. He has a workshop in his basement in his house with all his tools and a big, because he makes things with his hands. He's like a carpenter. He makes, out of wood, he makes desks. He makes, he's made his dining room table and chairs. I mean, so he's a woodworker. And, he brought me in there. I would sneak in by the side door so no one would see me. And I'd go in there and we hold each other really tight, our bodies entwined. And it was just magical, I was just so mesmerized and in love with him that I thought for sure he would leave his wife. But he never did leave his wife for me. And he really pushed me into another psychologist's bed. That's what happened. He pushed me into Jim's bed. So he wasn't going to, be able to have me. So he gave me to, it's kind of like sex trafficking, really. He wasn't going to have sex with me, so he gave me to my other psychologist, and he pushed us together to have sex. And we did. We had a sexual affair for 2 years, me and Jim. Bizarre, crazy making. So, hope you read the books and watch the other videos to catch up on everything. And let me know what you think in the comments. And until next time, have a great day. Bye-bye.